This conference will now be recorded.
So it's 7 minutes after 10 a.m. This is the Elsie Jewell Seaside Rural Citizens Advisory Committee for December 18th, 2020. I'll go ahead and take roll real fast. So we have some new members with us, and I'm guessing we want to do some introductions here. Connie, you're the chair. Would you like to get started? And actually, let me take a roll first. Two folks are not here yet. That's Dawn Abing and Jody Abing, and they are new members. Pam Birmingham is here. Susanna Gladwin is here. Connie Moore is here, and I see Herb Olstead is here. So Connie, do you want to go ahead and just sort of do some introductions and get it started?
Oh, okay. All righty. So I'm calling this meeting to order, and I'd have to look at my phone in order to, okay, at 10:08. And I'm Connie Moore, and I live over at the far end of Hamlet Road, and I'm currently the chair for this committee. So then, Carol, would you like to introduce yourself? Sounds good. Oh,
that was not Carol. Carol has not unmuted herself and has not in previous meetings, so we're going to assume that she would prefer not to speak.
Oh, okay. And Herb, I'm a dog person, so welcome. And if you'd like to introduce yourself, that would be great.
Did you say Herb?
Yeah.
Olstead?
Yeah.
It's Herb.
If I didn't pronounce it right, I apologize. Huh?
Yeah, I live on Tweedle Lane here in Jewell, Oregon, 1 mile down Tweedle Lane between Jewell and Elsie on Highway 103.
And do you pronounce your name Herb?
Yes.
Okay. Welcome.
Thank you.
Susanna.
Hi, this is Susanna Gladwin. I live in Jewell on Highway 103 and have a farm. Thanks.
Pam.
Hi, I live down Spruce Run, just south of 26 in Elsie, and have lived out here for about 32 years. And a realtor with Windermere, and have a degree in forestry, and very interested in management of our public lands.
And by the way, Susanna, welcome as a member. I'm sorry I didn't say that earlier. I'm still learning to be relaxed when I'm running these meetings. So anyway, didn't mean to bypass you. Is there anybody else in the meeting? I'm looking at the screen, Julia, and I'm not seeing any others, but I have to admit that I haven't looked at the people list.
Well, I'm here, Julia Decker, Planning Manager, Clatsop County, and also I'll introduce our Director, Kale Henriksen.
Hi, thank you.
Sorry about that.
And welcome to Herb and Susanna. We're really glad to have you on our committee, and so welcome and happy holidays.
Oh, thank you, and same to you. Can I? Is Carol calling in, or is she on GoToMeeting?
Carol Johansson, we don't know.
Because I did not realize until yesterday that on the call-in, if you get muted, if you do *6, that you get unmuted.
Okay.
And maybe she doesn't know that.
Oh, well, I suppose that's something that could go into the chat to give her a suggestion, and And then again, like I think Julia was saying, she may just prefer to listen in. But
Right.
Carol, welcome.
So Gail had put into the chat that we have an item to add to your agenda today, and that is the appointment of a liaison to the countywide CAC, Citizens Advisory Committee. So each of the CACs appoints a liaison who goes to and attends the CAC meeting for the countywide group, which is a larger group. And so it's made up of one person from each CAC, plus a few extra assorted folks who are appointed just to that. And so they are reviewing everything that everybody puts together, and they are hearing all of the input from each of the different committees and reviewing everything that comes from those committees. And so we'd like to add that to your agenda today. And then, of course, Gail
Okay.
put in the chat box to unmute your phone if you're muted, press *6 if you're using a telephone. That will mute
Okay,
or
great.
unmute you, apparently.
Yes.
Yes, in fact, I would have loved to have been in the meeting yesterday, but I spent the day at the VA with my partner. So
Okay.
just a routine set of appointments. So nothing major.
Oh, good.
So where on the agenda would you like to put the liaison appointment? Do you want to put that in toward the end after you go through your items today, so that you have a little feel for what we're doing, and people can decide if they want to do the time commitment, which is basically an extra meeting a month?
Yeah, I think that makes sense to me. That way everybody can kind of, be in the groove and think about it.
Okay.
When
and then the other,
is it?
I'm sorry.
When is it? I'm sorry. When is it generally?
Yeah,
Let me ask Gail.
it's the third Thursday of the month. So their next meeting would be January 21st. Normally they start at 1 p.m., but they've been running a bit behind. Their discussions have been pretty detailed. The next meeting on January 21st will start at 11 a.m.
Okay. I'm just thinking, I wanted to ask that question and put it out so that people could factor that into their decision.
Okay, very good.
Okay.
Let's see. Well, you have two sets of meeting minutes or meeting summaries to look at. If you'd like to take a look at those, and they are for October 15, 2020 and November 20th, 2020. Did you want to take a look at your meeting summaries and let us know if those are appropriate and suitable?
Well, let's go ahead and put them up, and then I'm kind of speaking for the group, I think. And then could you remind everybody where they can look at these in between the meetings?
Oh, well, they definitely are most accessible on the county website. They come in your packets, of course, and those packets are available on the county website. And then once they're approved, then they are in this case, the Elsie Jewell Seaside Rural CAC website. So there typically is going to be linkage to all those different places in your packets.
Right.
So basically on the land use planning page, go to the link for the, there we go. Go to the link for the comprehensive plan update.
Okay.
And it will take you to
Thank
a
you.
page, and see you have all those links there, and there's the Elsie Jewell one. And so you'd be able to look at all those materials, everything forward and backward. So you'll have the upcoming
Okay, thank you. I just
agendas,
wanted. Okay.
past minutes, the audio, video, if you want to relive the meeting, whatever you'd like. It's all there.
Okay. Thank you very much for maybe everybody that's in this meeting already knows about that, but I just, because we have some new members and a guest, I appreciate the review.
You're most welcome. Oh, and Gail has put the website address up in the chat box for you.
Okay,
And
terrific.
the audio of these meetings can be listened to later off of the county website?
Exactly the page we were just on, yes.
Yeah, And how long
And so
after
is the
meeting?
recording, sorry, go ahead, Susanna.
Oh, how long after does the recording get posted?
It can take a few days. It generally, it doesn't take a week. It's usually up within 2 or 3 days.
Okay.
And then it's up there for, I think, forever. I'm not quite sure. Maybe not forever, but definitely for at least a year or so.
Okay, great. And yeah, so my question is on the recording, because I've never gone back to it. Is it simply audio, or are the visuals part of it?
The visuals are there as well.
Great. Hey, so Susanna, there you go. You could actually relive the visuals.
There you go.
Yes.
Okay, well, did you want to return to looking at your minutes?
Sure. Let's see. Okay, all right. So is this where I'm very sorry, Herb. I'm gonna sound real clunky because I've ended up as the chair because the other chair had to resign, and and with everything else going in my life, this is, I'm training a little bit at a time. Do we, Julia, do we want to vote to approve these minutes?
You certainly can. You can vote to approve them. You can move to simply accept them. You can ignore them. That's completely up to you.
Oh.
So if you'd like to look through them and make sure that they reflect the discussion that you had. So the first set that's up there is from October. That was basically the members present were Connie and Pam. And then I think the November ones might have just been Connie and Susanna, who was not on the meeting at the time, or was not on the committee at the time. So just if you want to take a look at them, you can approve them. You can accept them if you don't want to go through and approve them, or just defer them. Totally up to you.
Pam, what would you like to do?
I've had a chance to review them, and even though I wasn't at the November meeting, they look fine to me, and I think we should approve them.
Okay. All righty. You want to make a motion for that?
I motion that we approve the meeting minutes for the October and November meetings for the Elsie Jewell Committee.
Okay. So new members, I'm looking for a second, if that makes sense to you, or maybe some questions or discussion.
I had a question on the parcel of old growth timber that the county proposed to selling. Where is that located?
That was originally called David Douglas Park, not the David Douglas up on 26, but it's more commonly called Red Bluff Park. It's just north of 26 and just east of Red Bluff Road, kind of at the intersection there.
Well, around the cemetery road.
Yeah, a little further east there, and all north of Highway 26.
Okay.
Gordon Smith had donated, or the Smith family had donated that to the county to be preserved as parkland.
Oh, yeah, Bob Worry. Yeah, I know the family well. Yeah, but that's not being sold, is it?
No, that was just, I just used that as an example of things we have to keep an eye on, and an area that we should make sure stays untouched, because that was the wish of the family that donated it.
Okay.
I'm looking through the minutes, and I believe there was a discussion that might not be reflected in the minutes that I brought up, that there was a lot of local concern over a rumor that those trees would be cut, but they were not, and that it is indeed a park, and I don't think it ever was, once it was a park, ever slated to be cut. But that might not be reflected in the minutes.
Okay, are you looking at the minutes of October then?
Well, I went down to November, but it was October, I believe, because I see that about cutting timber that and I don't think that, I think there was just on line 39 on page 1 that it just was commented on, but I think it might be good to be sure that that part of the discussion is in the minutes, because as Herb states, I mean, it is something that the community is very concerned about, that be preserved and never be logged, and there have been rumors in the past, and just that it should be referenced in the minutes that it is not, there has never been cutting planned.
Okay, so I'm looking at line, I'm sorry, but Susanna, if you wanted, I can read you that section of minutes real fast, starting on line 39, page 1 of the October minutes. It says, Ms. Birmingham discussed a parcel of old growth timber that the county had proposed selling several years ago, period. She stated that there was significant community concern about the possibility of the property being developed, period. Ms. Moore emphasized the need to preserve as many natural spaces as possible within the county, period.
Yes, and then it was after that, I believe we discussed a bit about that it was indeed that parcel that Connie referenced, and that it is a park and it is not slated for cutting, nor ever has been.
So add a sentence to that effect is what you're requesting?
Yeah, I think it's important, because as it kind of was red flagged for Herb, and as we were at that meeting of concerns over it. Yeah.
Okay, so we can make that amendment to the minutes. You can still approve them as amended.
Okay, so so Pam, did you want to restate the motion with the to include the amendment?
I motion that we approve the amended minutes of the October meeting, and
thank you.
The minutes as written for the November meeting.
Okay. Susanna, thank you for bringing that up. I think that, you know, especially with community concerns, you know, the more we can, you know, have something in writing there that shows that we're all on the same page for that, that's good.
Okay.
Is there a second?
Do you have a second?
I second.
I had a question.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yep.
Oh, okay. Go for it.
Okay, what about the trees that are dead and dying? Would they be allowed to be felled? They will be a danger, and also end up being lightning rods for fire if they're left the way they are. There's quite a few trees and they're dying and dead. They're very dangerous if they fell, or lightning rods for fire hazard. To preserve that, I think some of them probably should be taken out. That's just my professional what I know about logging and fires, that is a concern of mine.
Hi, this is Julia speaking again. So typically, in order to discuss a motion, we need to have a second on the table. I believe somebody has seconded, and then we could do the discussion part of the motion. I believe, Susanna, did you second that?
Yes, I did.
Okay, so Susanna has seconded.
Yeah.
So to Herb, this piece of property is owned by the county, is that correct?
Yes, it is owned by the
Well, I
county.
believe
Okay, so probably the thing to do is contact the property management specialist and just notify them of your concerns regarding how the property is being managed. I'm guessing if there are trees that should be taken out, the county would do that. But
And
I'm
some
I'm
trees
not
should be.
okay.
I'm not really sure that it's going to be the discussion for this day. But I mean, I understand your concern. I'm just wondering about getting it to the right person. I don't know that it needs to be a goal or policy. I'm just thinking that it needs to be something that's handled as part of forest management.
If
Okay.
something is designated parkland, and I don't know if that parcel is designated parkland, does that change management strategies?
Well, something that's managed as a park is preserved, whereas if it's managed for industrial timber, certainly it's handled differently because it's becomes, I mean, basically it's part of a rotation of timberland. It's going to go through a cycle that's different.
Okay, thank
Well,
you. Personally, I would like to see that parcel left untouched. Of course, if there are any trees that are in danger of falling onto Highway 26, those would need to be addressed. But otherwise, I believe very strongly that we need some unmanaged, untouched areas of habitat. And those dead trees and snags are wonderful wildlife habitat. So anyway, not to belabor the point, I know we need to move on.
Well, and actually what we're doing is looking at your minutes and making sure that they reflect your conversation from October.
right, right. I mean, because I'm kind of on the, I know that they're, recognizing Herb's concerns. I know there's been various concerns about managing old growth parts of Oregon or even other states. And what I'm hoping moving forward is that we can collectively, maybe not we meaning here, but collectively as a country, we can relook at how old growth gets managed, and are there other ways to manage it besides the way we've done it in the past, which is to either not touch it at all or go in and do a bunch of cleanup that alters the wildlife cycle. And I'm just kind of maybe there's some other ways to manage that, Herb, that would still, give us some additional protection in terms of fires and that kind of thing that we just haven't explored as a country before.
Well, I think left unmanaged, you can see the proof of what goes on with the fires we had this year in the Cascades and clear to California. So that's my view on it. You leave them unmanaged and leave snags and dead trees, you're going to burn. And that's just a fact.
Yeah,
And I don't think
right.
that
Yeah.
well on anybody's part.
Can I interject something? That this is just a discussion on the wording of the minutes, and that I think this discussion might be appropriate under the wildlife thing later on in the meeting. I don't know where it would be appropriate, but this is really just about the wording of the minutes.
Good point. Thank you, Susanna. Okay, so in fact, that's the thing. A lot of times when I'm thinking about some of this, some of our issues, I'm thinking in the future. So thank you, Suzanne.
Did you want to go ahead and vote on your?
Right. I mean, are we good with these? This is what was talked about then, and Herb, obviously moving forward, there's more to figure out.
Okay.
So all in favor of these minutes?
So do names or ask if anybody opposes.
Right. Are there any, are there any people opposing these minutes? Good point. Thank you. Taking it.
This is Herb. I abstain. Being as I wasn't there, I abstain. I can't really comment, I guess, on the minutes, so I abstain.
So Connie, I think you can say with no opposition that you can just agree, accept the minutes.
Yeah. So if good point. Thank you for the extra verbiage, Susanna.
That's from yesterday's meeting. My little tutorial.
Here. So if there's no opposition, we will accept the meetings. We'll approve the minutes as stated.
Okay, so the minutes. So the minutes are accepted with the amendment to the October minutes and the November as presented. So the next section of your agenda was public comment and input. You have actually been sort of doing that already. Did you have anything more to add to that? I will let you know that you're a little bit behind schedule. By 10:25, we were going to be talking about the goals and policies for Goal 5, Federal Wild and Scenic Rivers, State Scenic Waterways, Oregon Recreation Trails, and Scenic Views and Sites. So we'll want to go ahead and move through pretty quickly to get to that point, but we should see if there's any public comment or any more public comment and input at this point.
I'm sorry.
Okay,
You said that kind of
go ahead, Susan.
quickly. That whole section is that what you mean, that whole section on trails and you went kind of fast.
Well, I'm just letting you know what's coming up on your agenda here after the public input, which it sounds like there isn't any of. So I was going to go ahead and move you on to review of the Goal 5 topics for today. And for your area, we really have 4 to focus on right now. So if you'd like, we can move on to that.
Yes, I understand.
Yeah, I'm happy to move on unless there's any other concerns. Because then we'll be able to focus on that and discuss it.
Okay. So on about page 9 starts your comprehensive plan memo, which Ian Sisson, our senior planner, did. And this is on Goal 5 resource topics. These topics today are federal wild and scenic rivers, state scenic waterways, Oregon recreation trails, and scenic views and sites. So what we were asking of you today was to review Table 1, including the staff recommendations. We're asking you to identify specific policies that you want to pull out for further discussion or review if you choose. And that, any policies that don't require additional discussion, you can just approve by consensus. And then take a look at any ideas for new issues and new policies. So Gail has brought up for you on your screen the existing Goal 5 natural areas policies. There are 4 of them. So if you'd like to take a look at those, and Susanna, I think in your packet you will find, let me give you the page number real fast for that. I think you're going to be on about page 13.
You know, unfortunately, I find it very frustrating that the pages aren't numbered. Oh no, wait, well, there's one that says 2 of 3. So, but under the heading, it says action items for December 10th in yellow. Or do you mean down much lower of the?
It's going to be the Table 1. It's got the red band across the top. It says Table 1, existing Clatsop County Comprehensive Plan policies.
Yes, I'm there.
Okay. And so there's under Goal 5, it says 4 of them. So I'd like to have you focus on those 4 for a few minutes, and then we're going to slip down and take a look at the ones that are specific to this plan, these 2 planning areas that you guys represent. So for Goal 5 natural areas policy, policy 1 was significant natural and scenic areas and scenic sites should be set aside for preservation and managed so as to protect the unique characteristics of the area. Policy 2 was that the county should cooperate with appropriate state and federal agencies and private groups to ensure that examples of the full range of Oregon's natural ecosystems are preserved for future study and enjoyment. So that's basically everything from the tide pools to the old growth, so that we have the full measure of our types of ecosystems. Under water resources, the county will cooperate and coordinate with state and federal agencies in assuring the maximum beneficial use of all water areas in the county. And then finally, under wilderness areas, policy 1 was Clatsop County shall work with federal agencies in the protection of federal wilderness areas. Staff had recommended retaining all 4 of those policies, and I believe other committees working on this have been in agreement, but I want to hear from you.
So
Can I
I have my own questions, but I can wait until everybody else has had a chance.
My question is the last one, work with federal agencies protecting federal wilderness areas, because we don't have any in this county, correct? Federal wilderness areas.
I'm not sure that we have some federal designated areas. I don't know if we have one that's specifically federal wilderness area. Let's move up onto the resource inventory up above and see if there's anything on there. It's the page right above that, Susanna. It says Clatsop County Goal 5 Resource Inventory. So we have the resource descriptions. And I don't see a federal wilderness area.
I don't believe there's any in the county.
But in case there ever is one, would you want to work with federal agencies regarding its protection in the event there ever is one?
Oh, yes. I mean, if you want to keep it on the books, yes, that's fine.
But I would have to look and see if we have anything. I mean, we've got
I think the whole concept of wilderness areas is very well defined, and I don't think we have any. Lewis and Clark area, that's federal. That park is federal, but that's not wilderness.
Are you talking about the national park?
The Lewis
which is
Clark.
Federal, kind of its own thing.
Yes, and I mean the one thing to do is to amend that and have it the federal wilderness and other federal, parks, because we do have that park. I don't know if we have more than that park. That is I do believe it's a federal park.
Are you talking
Well,
about the National Monument, the Fort Clatsop National Monument?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, that's the whole Lewis and Clark thing, right?
Right.
yeah,
Yes, yes.
it's
I'm
actually
sorry.
a national park. I don't mean to, I worked there. So as I understand it, national monument is a slightly different category than a full national park, and it's a full national park.
Right. And yeah, so Fort Clatsop's a national monument, but anyway.
I just think on that policy, it might be appropriate to put more than the federal wilderness areas, but also however you want to define it, the national park, however you want to define it, it might be good to put that in there.
Okay, just so you know that that is actually a policy under its own heading, which is wilderness areas.
Gotcha. Okay.
No, I know you're not looking at the screen with us. That makes it a little bit more challenging. I know that.
So I guess what I'm wondering is, when we're looking at whether we're looking at policy 1, 2, 3, or 4. I mean, I mean, in terms of how they're lined up here, who determines and defines significant, and and who determines what's going to be part of the ecosystem, you know those kinds of things. Who makes those determinations as to what's going to be considered important to preserve?
Well, I would guess that you all would be making some recommendations if you'd care to. There are probably definitions for the state and federal agencies. I don't happen to have them here today. But significant is one of those nice vague words that doesn't give you a definition, obviously.
Right. Well, it's and then there's policy, the third one in the lineup. The county will cooperate and coordinate with state and federal in assuring the maximum beneficial use. Well, that can include making money. So,
Yeah.
meaning, again, who's going to determine whether it should be preserved or whether we should be making money in a particular, with a particular resource?
Well, the policy does say the county will cooperate and coordinate, so it sort of sounds to me like everybody's going to be working together on that. I would also just caution that these are our goals and policies. These are not actual ordinances themselves. This is just sort of an aspirational policy that allows you to create ordinance language that defines things a little bit more clearly. So a lot of times you will find goals and policies do have this sort of a little bit more vague aspirational touch to them that allows you to then refine them into specific ordinances, if that is helpful to you at all as you think about this.
Yeah.
And I noticed
Okay.
that Gail has brought up another screen, which I can't read completely well.
Yeah, so for the benefit of the committee members, a couple of months ago when we talked about water resources, groundwater resources, and this policy, Connie, that you mentioned specifically talks about water areas in the county. So DEQ has provided a definition of beneficial use, and that's on the screen here. Beneficial use includes domestic water supply, fishing, industrial water supply, boating, irrigation, water contact recreation, livestock watering, aesthetic quality, fish and aquatic life, hydropower, wildlife and hunting, and commercial navigation and transportation.
Okay, thank you. As I look at that list, that's sort of what's behind my questions about significant and the maximum benefit is I don't, and this may not be the place. I just think I'm part of what I want to do for the future is I want to figure out how we can expand our thinking about natural resources and think about them in, you know, more than from a human perspective, especially you know, what can I get out of it perspective, as opposed to just allowing the wildlife and the land to be there for itself. And having that as a driving force in making decisions, as opposed to about 2/3 on that list had to do with what's in it for us. So I don't know if that's you know, maybe that's something off in the future, and that's okay. I'm hoping that over time we can change our thinking about natural resources.
Well, this is Pam. One thing that keeps occurring to me in updating the plan, because this will be a document on the records for quite some time, I think we would be remiss if we did not include some language in here regarding climate change. And I don't know if that's appropriate. I'll throw that out there and look for some guidance. But all of these, or most of these areas and resources affect climate change.
Well, yeah,
Julia
and
or
that's
Dale, what do you think? Is this a place to maybe put some climate change language in the document?
So I don't know to whom your question was addressed, Pam, but I think that as we go through all the goals in the comp plan, we need to be considering policies that can be used to help mitigate the impacts of climate change. And I don't know if you were able to attend the climate change workshop that we did. I think it was back in January, long before life changed forever. But Chris Shirley had come up from Salem to talk about the Department of Land Conservation and Development's climate change framework that they were working on, and actually had a worksheet for the committee members that looked at ways that we can incorporate some of these climate change policies into the comp plan. So I think it would be appropriate.
Well, and I think I just wanted to throw in, really, climate change was behind a lot of what I just said previously. But I was trying to kind of, sometimes that can be kind of a sticky term, and I really think, you know, that you know, I do want to address climate change. I think that if we address, if we can somehow over time change our thinking about natural resources, that climate change will naturally be addressed. But you know, sometimes I'm in my ivory tower, so maybe we just need some climate change language to kind of get everything started.
I think that what Gail has up on the screen in front of us is the table that Chris Shirley had presented last January, with some things that she was providing to you as framework to consider when we were hitting all of these different goals and policies, to consider 4 different sections of goals. And I am gonna make that a little bit smaller so I can see it better. There was for open space and natural resources, which is kind of what you're looking at now.
Right.
She had some ideas. Let's see. Park closures due to downed trees and landslides, unknown effects on stream flow and forest transition, increased in-stream flow standards may reduce water availability for municipal and agricultural uses, changes to coastal wetlands. If you're able to look at that screen, is there anything there that you'd like to use or consider? And you don't have to do it today, but you might want to consider language, ideas, concepts to place in here.
So I had a question about the column that says unknown effects on the stream flow, and then I guess my second question is the park closures. Are those I'm not sure, since I don't think I was able to attend that meeting, so I'm trying to catch the context of those 2 columns.
Well, I believe that the park closures would just simply be that the parks would be closed due to the effects of things like extreme weather that took down trees or that created landslides and made the parks unsafe or unusable, and that we don't know the effects on stream flow as forests transition from one type of species to another. I mean, we're seeing it happen now, and maybe Herb could speak to that. I know that we've seen changes to Douglas fir over the last 20 years. Some trees are doing better than others. Some species are doing better than others. I mean, I'm hearing from some folks in the forest industry that there is a transition going on in forestry. And Herb, maybe you could speak to that?
Well, I've been here all my life and log and continue to log, and I really haven't noticed this change in the Douglas fir, other than it's growing great and doing well out here in our area, real well. And I haven't noticed that change. I don't know who's coming up with the changes. The people I've talked to and worked with for the last 40 years haven't mentioned any of this to me. So that's including the state forestry and the timber companies. I'm unaware of that.
Okay, so you haven't noticed an increase in Swiss needlecast, for example?
No, that was 20 years ago. It was along the coast and it's went away.
Oh,
I've been
okay.
logging on Hamlet Road up on probably above your place on Punch Bowl Creek this winter and or summer, and it's pretty much went away, the Swiss needlecast.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, because I remember when I first needed to replant that, and Herb, that would have been about 20 years ago, that, because I was remembering some concerns about the health of this, the main species that, that people normally plant. So that's nice to know that maybe it's resolved itself.
Yeah.
What
The other
seems
thing,
I
to,
think
I don't think,
Go ahead, I'll be quiet.
I was pretty much done. I don't think it's an issue out here now or in Clatsop County or anywhere along the coast that I'm aware of. It's like I said, it's pretty well, they survived most of the trees and they're growing well now, but I just haven't seen any difference in the way Douglas fir are growing or any
okay.
quality or any type of issue there myself.
Okay. So the other thing I had heard was that there was a concern about there might be a shift in invasive species, for example, insects or critters that would defoliate, that we might see a change in insects. And that was another thing that we had read about. There's some sort of woolly agilates thing.
Woolly
I
what?
haven't noticed that. I've noticed invasive species, but that's from natural occurrences. The logging camps that planted Scotch broom in places can be a menace. And there's a few different things. We clean all of our equipment off before we go into state forests and sterilize them so we don't bring any more in. But birds and all kinds of animals can bring things in and spread it. So there's always some sort of a small problem with that, but I don't think anything major, not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
And my
I
comment?
just noticed, I'm sorry. I have a comment about some tree health that I've noticed, but I don't have to be the next person. What I noticed was, now this is in Clatsop County over along Highway 30, so it's not really in our area, but I noticed this last summer a lot more, and I've driven Highway 30 up and down for many, many years. I noticed a lot of tent caterpillars this summer that I hadn't noticed in the past. Did I miss something from the past, or is that something that's just come up with just in the last summer or so?
They
In
come
the
in
late
cycles.
60s, out here in the Jewell area, in the late 60s, early 70s, those caterpillars were in here and defoliated every alder and maple tree in this valley. It's not something new. It happens occasionally, but that was a big issue in those days. But every tree survived them eventually. They didn't kill any of them, but they did defoliate the alder trees all through the Jewell Valley here.
And can I comment?
Sure.
That I think the invasive species thing is a really big issue, but I don't think that in particular, from just my personal observation, is the warming climate issue. I think the knotweed, which also came in with the logging camps, is my understanding, the knotweed on the Nehalem is really bad, and the tansy is coming back up again on another cycle, and I haven't heard anything. I'd love to know if they're going to do that. Put out the cinnabar moths that eat the tansy, which is what controlled it back, I forgot how, 20 years ago, whenever it last was bad. And to me, the warming climate here in Clatsop County, I really worry about fires. We so far haven't had a bad fire in Clatsop County. And the warming river, the Nehalem, is, I didn't see it tested last summer. The summer before was around, I believe, 70 degrees. And feeder creeks, according to the Upper Nehalem Watershed Council that tests, and we, Christopher and I tested Buster Creek, or about 10 degrees cooler than the main Nehalem, except for Fishhawk Lake, which is a concern about temperature. And I think there's, probably appropriate for discussion of, I think somewhere maybe today on invasive species, but I think the climate change thing should be linked with the fire and the warm temperature of the river, which is later on in today's, fish and wildlife part.
Well, I had brought up testing on Monday, and I think it's really important to keep track of what's Susanna, what's happening from year to year. And just living out here, the last 2 or 3 winters have been way warmer than, even though I'm not a native of this area. I am a native Oregonian, and it just, I can't, I can't believe, like, especially last year, how few nights even dropped to freezing in comparison to when I first moved out.
Well, I have experienced winters, fairly warm winters. That the biggest thing that I see impacting our weather and due to climate change is the polar vortex thing, and the way that jet stream. I don't believe I've ever seen a jet stream. It'll go pick up Alaska air, go down to as far south as Mexico, come straight back up, bringing warm air up on it. I've never seen the jet stream just to do what it's doing. It's just crazy what it's doing, and it is impacting our weather that way.
So back to our policies. Thank you for that, Susanna. I would like to see on our first 4 policies, or at least the 3, because I don't know about that we have the federal lands, but in that language, for instance, policy 1 toward the end, so as to protect the unique characteristics of the area, maybe comma with an emphasis to mitigate climate change. That's probably not quite the right language, but I think we need nimble language, flexible language as the science and the climate changes. And personally, I would like to see the word in there with an emphasis on mitigating the effects of climate change. How does everybody else feel about that?
Yeah, I was trying to also think, and sometimes I don't think on my feet very well, but I was wondering if we would want to say to respond to and mitigate climate change, because, you know, we're basically trying to, at this point, we're behind the 8 ball, so we're trying to respond to it. But then, of course, we want to, over time, we want to mitigate the effects as well.
Yes, I would like to see at the end, it says managed so as to protect the unique characteristics of the area. And then I don't know if we need to repeat managed, but implying managed also to mitigate climate change on that policy 1.
Okay,
So
and I'm sorry.
I'm just going to say, so, you know, maybe I tend to be a fairly wordy person. So Pam, you know, I think just at least acknowledging that we need to account for climate change in our management plan, you know, just at least having some verbiage in there sounds good to me.
So what I was going to do, this is Julia, what I was going to do was read to Susanna what Gail has added to policy 1, which is language that Pam and Connie kind of suggested here, as well as Susanna, and that is policy 1 would now read, significant natural and scenic areas and scenic sites should be set aside for preservation and managed so as to protect the unique characteristics of the area, comma, with an emphasis on mitigating the effects of climate change.
Sounds good.
Oh, I like that. I'm really pleased with that, if other committee members agree.
Can I say something?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I'm against this. I'd like somebody to point out what the climate has changed. I've been here for almost 70 years and I haven't seen much difference in it. It always changes from year to year, but I've seen the hottest summers and creeks, the streams go dry in this valley in the 60s, 2 summers in a row, and they haven't since. That's Klein's Creek and Cow Creek, just for openers. And extremely hot, dry weather then. And I haven't, last summer was a cool summer here. I don't know. In the summer before, I know because we were able to log all summer without a lot of restrictions on our fire situations, or not fire, but fire hazards. And it every year is different, but I haven't seen this big warming or anything else that people are talking about. So I'm against this wording in this, and I'll vote no on it. But that's just my opinion, and I just haven't seen this great change that you're talking about. Thank you.
Hi, this is Pam. I think climate change is a global problem, and I think we're fortunate in our little part of the world that we haven't seen some of the dramatic changes here, but in my opinion, that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. And monitoring ODF's plans for the habitat conservation plan and listening to those, they have quite a bit of concern and are building in some adaptability into the habitat conservation plan for the effects of climate change on our forests. Things change slowly, and like you, Herb, I've lived out here a long time and I see changes, but some are just on cycles. But again, it's a global issue, and I think we need to think locally to protect our forest industry to slow down climate change globally. And I'm not arguing that we haven't seen changes here locally, but we need to think in the bigger terms, because I think all the leading scientists pretty much around the world agree that it's real and that it's happening.
There's a large group of scientists that won't agree with you, and the two biggest polluters in this world, China and India, how are you going to stop that?
We can't, but we can do what we can in our little committee here to do our part.
Yeah, at the expense of who? I just don't believe it's true, and I don't know where. I still haven't heard anybody say what proof you have of it. I mean, what's the proof that this is going on?
Well, I would like to say one bit of proof of the impacts of rising carbon levels is the ocean getting more acidic, the impact on the oysters, the oyster larvae, which I do believe they raise larvae in tanks now to control acidification levels for the larvae, but now they're concerned over the little crab feelers. There's little hairs on crabs for some reason. The higher acidity is affecting those. So it is indeed on the how much carbon is out there, which is measured every year, is affecting Clatsop County in that way, of the oysters and not the oysters so much. I don't know if we do a lot of oysters. It's more Washington, just north of us, but the crabs, it could be a really big deal on our crab harvest off the coast of Clatsop County. So if we do, I don't know, it might be we're slightly south of Clatsop County, but but anyway. But the one thing is that, this is a group of us on this committee, and we all get to have our vote in all of these things. And the climate discussion, it's a big deal for many of us. And I would just want to move to accept that language and have us all vote so that we can move on. There's a lot more to be talked about.
Well,
okay, Julia, was that a motion?
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, this is Julia, and I was just asking Susanna if that was a motion.
Can I or can I start the motion, or does Connie need to call for a motion?
No, you can make a motion.
So I move to adopt the language that, was it Gail who read it out, or was it you? But about putting in the, oh, I forgot the wording exactly. You should probably restate it for the motion.
I will restate it for the motion for you. This is Julia. I read the language as you and Pam and Connie kind of discussed it and proposed it. For policy 1, the language that you were proposing is significant natural and scientific areas and scenic sites should be set aside for preservation and managed so as to protect the unique characteristics of the area, comma, with an emphasis on mitigating the effects of climate change, period.
Yes, and I move that we adopt that language. And we need a second.
You need a
This
second.
is Pam. I second.
Thank you.
Okay. I will call for discussion, and I have some of my own, but I don't have to be the first one.
Okay, go ahead.
First of all, is some of the science. I've bumped into a couple of short documentaries here and there, and because I don't have time to read. But anyway, there's a lot being said about how trees are carbon sinks, and I think there's a lot more we still don't know about beyond that, other ways to mitigate climate change that we may not have even fully explored yet. And I mean, there's an interrelationship between all of the natural world, and there may be some other things that can be done that to balance our needs. So Herb, I want to let you know that I am hearing you and that I'm listening to you. The language I feel that's being added is broad, just like I had, and maybe that's the plus side, you know, like some of these other policy, the language in the other policies, it's broad, it's not very detailed and defined. And so we may find a way to mitigate climate change that completely balances our the wishes for the mitigation of climate change and balances what's needed from your perspective. I guess what I like about this language is that it recognizes that we need to continue to look at the climate change issue, but it doesn't specifically say exactly what we're going to do about it, because we're all still learning how to make how to balance these things.
I don't know if we're going to get into this later or not, but you're talking about trees being carbon, keeping, you know, getting rid of carbon and making oxygen. It's a fact, and I don't know if you know this, but younger trees and reprod absorb more carbon and put out more oxygen than older trees by far. I don't know if you knew that, but that's a fact. The older trees don't absorb the carbon or put the oxygen out the younger trees do.
Actually,
there's a lot of things. You know, I'm not against any kind of stopping pollution. Why doesn't Classic County require all of their vehicles to burn natural gas, which puts only 1/3 of the pollution out as gasoline engines? It's readily available. 1/3 the pollution of gasoline powered engines. The technology is there, people use it. A lot of the garbage companies are using it, making their own out of their garbage waste. But 1/3 of the carbon pollution from natural gas. Why doesn't anybody talk about that?
Well,
that's probably where most it's coming from.
I think later on in all our policies that might come up. But we have so much to cover in the next hour, and in less than an hour. I would love to just keep going through these ones if we could.
I thought we were here to
And
discuss things and not cut people off like you are, Susanna. I'd like to
Well,
hear from some of the other.
the trouble is we have this long agenda, and we've only scheduled from, what is it, 10 to 12? No, I don't want to cut you
but
off. I'm saying in the future we can discuss it.
this is a multi-year process, but so I'm reaching out to Julia, and I'm not sure how, how important it is to cover the entire agenda each time. Could you or Gail speak to that?
Well, this is Julia, and we do have some trying to keep everybody on track so that we are more or less in the same place at the same time, so that the presentations that we schedule and the materials that everybody is working on, we're all kind of in the same place at the same time, and then it goes to the CAC so that everybody has the similar focus. It just keeps everything more organized. It doesn't mean that you can't come back to issues at all. You certainly absolutely can. One thing I wanted to let you know is that after these 4 items, it looks deceptively short to you, but after these 4 items, we actually have policies that are specific to the Seaside Rural Community Plan that no other committee is going to look at. These are your policies, and probably we want to have you move on to those. There are no specific policies for the Elsie Jewell Community Plan, but there are for the Seaside Rural. So you certainly, you can create new policies or recommend them, I guess I should say. And you can have this discussion picked up and moved to another agenda. I'm going to tell you that climate change is probably going to be a recurring theme. Certainly it's scheduled into Goal 7, which is natural hazards. So that discussion is not going to go away. I hope that helps you, but you do probably want to take a look at wrapping up this part to be able to look at your Seaside Rural Community Plan policies and goals.
Okay, well, and I think that back to, recognizing Herb's concerns, I think that I guess I feel that the wording for the climate change is broad enough that that we haven't said in that language exactly how we're going to mitigate it. And so I feel there's some flexibility for things like you've suggested. The younger trees absorb more carbon, or, utilizing other types of policies in the county to to control pollution, those kinds of things. To me, this language is broad and can be worked on over, and the details to support that broad language can be worked on over time.
That's one of the reasons I tried to structure that suggested language, because it is broad and it acknowledges that we're aware of climate change, but I really want our plan to be adaptive and nimble as science and things change. And because really, as it states in what policy, within pretty much all of these, that we will work with federal and state agencies, because they're the ones more with the scientists that will guide us, because none of us are experts. And I've seen, completely conflicting information that older trees sequester more carbon. So it's all changing as more study is done. So I like this language. I don't think this is threatening language. I think it's acknowledgement going into the future.
So I'm calling, I guess I'm calling for a vote at this point to accept this this language.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
I'm opposed, no.
Okay, so I have 1, 2, 3, 3 in favor and 1 opposed.
And okay, well then, so at this point, the language is accepted, and Herb, I definitely want to emphasize the fact that, you know, your perspective is important, and that it can continue to nudge how we respond to this language as time goes on. So then, are there any other changes for the other 3 policies or updates? I'm not hearing anything, so maybe it's time to move to the next part of the agenda.
Okay, so if you want to go ahead and Susanna, we're down on to about the 15th page. It's table 2 of the Federal Wild and Scenic Rivers with the red banner across the top. It says policy review, and then it says Seaside Rural Community Plan policies and goals. And so the first one has to do with Policy 1, Estuary and Coastal Shorelands Tillamook Head Policy. And it just says Tillamook Head shall be preserved as a unique and coastal land formation. Uses other than forest management, wildlife habitat, low intensity recreation, natural and mineral resources shall be discouraged. New mining operations on Tillamook Head, which are in, pardon me, there are sirens outside. New mining operations on Tillamook Head, which are in view of Highway 101, shall be screened. Staff's recommendation was to retain that policy. Actually, let me look. There are several policies. There was only one where staff had some notes, which was the next one on recreation policies. Susanna, you have it in front of you in your hands. The rest of the committee, you can read that as well as I can. Is there anything in there that you want to pull out and discuss? Is there anything in there that you need to hash out, or that you want to change any recommendations on?
I'm sorry, who were you? I was buried in the verbiage, and could you restate what you just said? I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just
I'm reading it. Is that can you read it, Connie, on your screen?
Yes, and well, and I mean, for example, I guess I'm tripping over natural and mineral resources shall be discouraged as part of the list of uses other than. So I guess I'm not sure what natural and mineral resources are.
Well, typically that's going to be mining, quarrying and mining.
Okay. All right. Well.
And I think that probably the only mineral resources, there might be the rock formations that making gravel out of there. I'm not sure. That might be it. I don't know if you know, Herb, or not.
Yeah. Well, if we're preserving, go ahead, Herb. Go ahead. Oh.
I would assume that would be what that means. That's all I can think of that would be out there that would be under a mining designation. Rock pits.
Well, Yeah, I haven't been out to Tillamook Head in a long time. I, when I think of some forest management and the other things in the list, it all makes sense to me. But maybe I just don't know enough about mining. But I wonder, I guess I wonder why we're trying to do any mining on Tillamook Head. And that may just be exposing my bias on that. If we consider it a unique coastal land formation.
Actually,
I see the extent of the gravel mining up Buster Creek. It's it's getting pretty extensive. I'm not saying it's inappropriate there. I'm not sure that I want to see something that extensive on Tillamook Head.
Well, yeah, I'm just, for me, there's just a conflict between the unique coastal land formation and mining. So but, I may be, not seeing the whole picture.
Yes, I would like to see mineral resources stricken
this is
from
Julia.
that policy one statement.
This is Julia. I just want to remind everybody that quarrying and mining is actually Goal 5 resource itself.
Yes, but this is specifically about Tillamook Head.
Okay.
I mean, you're saying that this is what we need to look at today. It's under today's review, correct? Is that what you're saying?
That's correct. Yes, that's correct.
Yeah. And I'm saying we're just discussing Tillamook Head, not countywide.
Right. I'm not opposed to mining, I'm not against all mining. I'm agreeing with Susanna. I'm thinking of Tillamook Head specifically based on the lead-in statement. And I do, based on what's been stated and what the policy has said for the past, supporting that policy of preserving a unique coastal and land formation, I just don't see where mining comes in on that.
Okay, so you are looking to strike mineral resources from the list.
Yeah.
Yes.
Is this on private property?
It does not state.
Yeah, that's my concern is I like to say I haven't been out to Tillamook Head in a long time. So I'm not sure how much of it or which part we're talking about. So that's a good point, Herb.
And a good part of Tillamook Head, at least the coastal slope areas, and I don't know either how much of that land is considered Tillamook Head, but there's a lot of geologic concerns. There's so many slips, slides up there. I would hate to see disturbances that could aggravate slides. Personally, I'm fine with the language as written.
I'd like to comment that I think that the area needs to be defined more than just Tillamook Head, because I think it might be kind of important wording. As Herb is concerned over people that have private land. I mean, as I said, I don't know the ownership, but I think that we should maybe look at this at a later date. I'd like to table it until we knew more about the extent of what they're defining as Tillamook Head. unless you can tell us, Gail. I'm
Yes,
so bad.
I don't know the answer, Susanna.
Or Julia. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. Do we need to make a motion to table that, or do we just move on to the next policy and leave this one?
You can just
Oh,
agree
okay,
to move on. I don't think you need to have, unless you want to say specifically when you'd like to look at it again. You know, is it something you want to chat about again in January, or under a different topic, or just return to it later when it's convenient on your agenda? You can just
yeah,
make,
I think that as long as it matches up with how we need to get things done.
okay, so we have the questions then of what is included as part of Tillamook Head and how much of it is under private ownership. So to return to that at a later agenda, if that, and you can
Okay.
do this by consensus. If you all just agree to that, that's fine.
I agree.
Any?
Okay. I'm not
I
hearing
agree.
any objections. Okay. Okay, was there anything else in here that you wanted to take a look at? You are about 20 minutes from the end of your meeting or toward the end of your agenda, if you wanted just to kind of keep in mind where we are here.
Okay, you mean in terms of the rest of what's on the screen here?
Well, right, and then it goes down to a second page with some other policies. So you've just looked at the Tillamook Head policy. There's also recreation policies, open space, historic, scenic, and natural areas, historic and scenic areas policies. So there's, you know, there's more stuff. So I just wanted to have you take a look and see.
Well, so I'm wondering if what would sense would be to just kind of quickly review and ask and answer some questions of for the rest of it, and then that would allow people to maybe formulate some additional ideas, concerns, or whatever for to work to work on it again. Does that make sense?
Well, we could take a look, for example, at the recreation policies. Policy number 2, staff had a recommendation and a comment. And so anyway, the policy itself reads, public access to the Nekenekum River and North Fork of the Nehalem River currently exists at several locations shown on a map that is unnamed right at the moment. These accesses are considered adequate at this time. If new data indicates a need in the future, new access shall be developed on public land and adequate provisions made for the protection of adjacent privately owned land. So anyway, we've got no map number there, so that's just a staff note. We're probably looking for that. Staff's recommendation, and this is from Ian again, a portion of the Nehalem River has been named as a scenic river, and he was recommending updating policy to correctly identify the map number and verify access points, and add new policies under Table 3 to address the scenic river designation. So we do have a couple of recommended policies in there to anything else that you might recommend, but we were actually recommending adding the scenic river designation to the table.
Okay,
So
that's
other than that, staff was just saying, you know, retain policies, recommending retaining policies.
right.
But if you have other things that you'd like to take a look at or pull out or concerns, please go ahead.
Well, I like the fact that the North Fork of the Nehalem is being considered as a scenic river or a scenic corridor, and I think that if I'm understanding your recommendations is that we would support that scenic designation more fully with some additional policies. Am I reading that right?
We can take a look at the additional policies on table 3, which is, I think, the next page down. There it is. And you remember, for those of you who aren't used to using this yet, if you put your cursor over to the right, there's some plus and minus signs, and you can enlarge the document so you can see it more easily.
Okay, perfect for the reminder.
And so let's see. So Ian had drafted an issue to be addressed is a section of the Nehalem River within Clatsop County was designated as an Oregon Scenic Waterway in 2019. And so he recommended adding the designated section as a significant Goal 5 resource. And then he had also made or I'm not sure if this was Ian or if it was someone else, the Oregon Coast Trail and Saddle Mountain Trail are designated Oregon recreation trails, which are required to be designated as significant Goal 5 resources in the county's comp plan. Both trails are currently not included, and so the recommendation was to include those.
Yeah.
So that was basically, and then Gail had also written down some of the things that you had been discussing: climate change impacts, impact of invasive species, and pollution and air quality, with a recommendation that the county should convert to fleet vehicles to natural gas. So we have some we have some issues to be addressed and a couple of proposed solutions or language.
And right there under the trail, I think there's the horse camp, the Northrop Creek Horse Camp, the trails, and I would like to include the evacuation trail, the tsunami evacuation trails, if it's appropriate here, or maybe appropriate someplace else.
Okay, well, this would be for recreation trails. These are Oregon Coast and Saddle Mountain Trails are designated Oregon recreation trails. So these are scenic and recreation designations. So probably the tsunami evacuation trail is probably going to be under Goal 7, which is natural hazards.
Right.
It's not necessarily scenic.
And what about the trails on Ecola and yes, Indian Beach, and those? Some of them are part of the coastal trail, but of those and those parks, would they be included?
Well, those are state parks.
Pardon me?
Those are state parks, so they're probably included in the state parks.
And this is only for county trails?
Well, this is, oh, okay, and Gail has brought up the recreational trails program here. So here's some information for you regarding the rec trails. It's a federally funded grant program, and it's administered by state parks. So anyway, this is a specific program. And there's a statewide trails plan.
That I don't know if the Salmonberry Trail comes close enough to Clatsop County to be accessed from the county somewhere. Probably not. Pam would know better about that. That might be when it gets developed more. It might be nice to access it from Clatsop County, possibly.
I'm not sure where the county line is. I'd have to look on a map.
Yeah, I get
there.
confused on that too.
To not sound like a record, but I want to make sure we put language in here throughout the plan that gives us flexibility and adaptability. I 100% agree with the staff recommendations for policy 2. And maybe put something in there, and I don't know if we need to. I don't know how this really works, but should a new trail like the Salmonberry, for instance, come into fruition and be in our county, that we would have the ability to not just limit it to these mentioned already, but going into the future, that it could apply to new trails, recreation trails within our area.
Okay, so Pam, are you looking for language then that's a little bit more forward-looking and saying, you know, should new trails be adopted, the county supports, or something like that? I'm just giving a
Yes,
going.
because this will be a long-standing document, and that we don't want it to be just a snapshot in time for this very moment. So building in some adaptability, I think, is prudent.
Thank you, Pam. That's great. I had a question about, as I'm looking at the language, sometimes it's referencing the Nehalem River, and sometimes it's, then there's the one place where it referenced the North Fork of the Nehalem. I'm a little bit confused as to, there was that first part where it talked about the North Fork of the Nehalem. Then in the the second part that we were focusing on, it just said Nehalem. So I'm a little bit confused as to which part you were referencing when you were talking about, you know, in expanding the scenic river.
That's the main Nehalem. They're separate watersheds. Sorry if I interrupted there, but they're separate watersheds, and the main stem of the Nehalem from Spruce Run Park on down, I think it's 18 river miles, was designated by the state as a wild, either state or federal, wild and scenic river. So they're two separate watersheds.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, then what's the so back to the North Fork of the Nehalem, what was the staff indicating with that commentary?
I think that was retained policy.
Yeah, so
well, it mentioned something about scenic, so that's why
right.
there's something covering up the far left side of the verbiage.
Yeah, so we're not, Connie, this is Gail. We're not looking to create it as a scenic waterway. It's already been designated that by the state back in 2019. And under statewide planning rules and statewide planning goal 5, if you have a designated scenic waterway in your county or in your planning area, then you're required to add it to the inventory in the comprehensive plan. So that's all that we're doing is just because the state designated a scenic waterway in 2019, we're going to have to update the plan. Whether you agree with their designation or not, we have to update the plan.
Okay, and I'll do my own research on all the aspects of scenic waterway so that I know more about what's happening with the North Fork. So thank you.
Can I make a comment?
Sure.
On the recreation policies, policy 2, I'd like wording that new acts, if new data indicates a need in the future, new access shall be developed on public land with adequate provisions made for the protection of adjacently private-owned land, but also access that will, I'd like wording in there about new access developed with riparian area protection, something like that.
Oh, I like it. Yeah.
Oh, I like that. That's good.
Yep.
And this should come back anyway when you have a map. And have I figured out all that stuff, because you don't know, you don't have the map and can't really say the access points, correct?
not sure I understand your question.
Well, and your staff note is that you don't have a map.
Oh, there's a map and we're not sure what it is, so we need to locate it and add it. There's a reference to it, but there's no map number provided, so we need to update it and identify the map number correctly.
So I'm
so that's
assuming
just
we might
that's
revisit this at
housekeeping.
the next meeting when we know more, or in the
Well,
future.
I mean, it may take a while to figure out what map this is supposed to go with this, so I don't know that it'll be
Yeah.
at the next meeting, but this could be an ongoing archaeological dig for all I know to locate the correct map.
Yes.
Um,
Okay.
But Gail has
So,
added onto policy 2, Susanna, let me read it to you. So you said, let's see, so this is on to this is a last sentence now. After the protection of adjacent privately owned land, new sentence, riparian areas adjacent to public access points shall be protected to the greatest extent possible.
yes. Thank you.
Yes, that's really good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Well,
I
how
like
large
it too.
area does that involve? Are
I'm
we
sorry,
talking
Herb,
about
I didn't
private property? Are we talking about private property, and how large a riparian area adjacent shall be protected to the greatest possible extent? Now, how big an area is that? That's pretty vague if it's private property.
So it says developed on public land. Is the sentence before that?
Well, it says
I think
adjacent
this,
to public, so I guess it could be private too. I don't know.
Riparian areas adjacent
Yes.
to public access points shall be protected to the greatest extent possible, is what it says.
So would that be on private land or just a piece of the public land that has the access?
Okay, the language that you've got so far says riparian areas adjacent to public access points. So it does not indicate whether those riparian areas are public or private. Also, I should point out to you that we probably are going to have riparian setbacks anyway. The sentences before it might be helpful, and Gail is hitting them with a highlighter. It says, these accesses are considered adequate at this time. If new data indicates a need in the future, new accesses shall be developed on public land with adequate provisions made for the protection of adjacent privately owned land. And so then your sentence after that says riparian areas adjacent to public access points shall be protected to the greatest extent possible, adjacent to new public access points.
Yeah, I do question considered adequate, because I think we're just talking about the lower part of the Nehalem River in Clatsop County, correct? And that I don't know, Herb, if you can help me on this, but the upper reaches of in Clatsop County, are there any public access points along there where the public can put into the river on public ground?
Oh, I think a Big Eddy Park up around Vernon. That's in Columbia County, though.
I mean Clatsop County. Do you know of any?
Public access, there used to be one on the Pope Meeker Road at the end of that county road, but I don't think it's maintained any longer.
I would like to, because we will be discussing that in the future. I wouldn't say that it's I would like to take out considered adequate, that sentence, because I would like to look into that more. Am I making myself clear?
A map. Sorry, this is Pam. I think seeing a map of where public access points are now would allow us to make a decision whether we consider public access adequate or not. I've always found it hard to figure out where we could put our canoe in the river. And I don't feel that I know enough to say if it's adequate or not right now.
That's a good point.
Yes, but we're reviewing all of this in the future, correct?
Oh, you'll come back to this, yes,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
we'll be putting materials together for you and drafting stuff. It'll go to the countywide group. It'll get probably revised from there and come back to you. So yeah, you'll see things multiple times.
Yeah, and if you could just, get the potential public access points identified, if that's easy, and if you could, that would be wonderful.
That's on the to-do list. Want to let you know you've got about 8 minutes left.
Right.
Can I throw a few things in?
Yeah, I mean, actually, what I was going to talk about, I think just to let you all know, I'm going to try to, for the next meeting, make sure that we know specifically what is, what's going to need to go countywide and what we're, the kind of identify the chunks of the agenda so that, the timing can be managed a little bit differently. Is my hopes. Okay.
And I would like to, in the current, on the Clatsop County Resource Inventory, I want to include Fishhawk Falls, and boy, I thought there was another one. Herb, have you had a chance to look at these and the other and Pam and Connie over what you know of?
Well, I didn't really understand the question. Looking at the designated scenic views and sites.
Yeah, outstanding.
Yeah, Fishhawk would probably be a good.
There's
Highway
another
202 north of the game.
Yeah, I was thinking, Herb, we might be thinking of the same one. There's what's it called? Lee's Camp or something like that. There's another major, I thought there was another major waterfall along 202 that I'm not seeing here that I drive by and I know I've been in there once I thought the name of it was different.
Yeah, Lee Wooden Park.
Yeah.
I think and that's Fishhawk Falls. Lee Wooden Park.
Oh, okay. So we're talking about the same thing. Okay.
Yes. There is another falls on Fishhawk Creek, but it's on state forestry land. Is it? I think, Herb, do you know the other falls?
Well, there's a falls on Little Fishhawk Creek.
Yes, I think.
Different creek.
Yeah,
it's
a different falls.
That's owned by Weyerhaeuser, owns that property.
Weyerhaeuser, And so that wouldn't be accessible to the public, I don't think you would. But I don't know if you want to list it, but it wouldn't be accessible unless you have permission. I'm trying to think of other scenic.
Would it be appropriate to include the Jewell Wildlife Habitat? The Elk Reserve?
Yeah, I mean, people stop there all the time for the scenic views of the elk and stuff.
Oh, they love it. They love it.
Mm-hmm.
It would, if that makes sense, I think it would be good.
Now, personally, standing on the Vine Maple Nehalem River Bridge and watching fish go up, if you can catch them, is a scenic view.
So I'm seeing include Fishhawk Falls / Lee Wooden Park and also Jewell Meadows to the inventory list.
Yes. And I don't know if we need to list Jewel Meadows because I actually don't know how much the viewing is for the Beneke Creek Meadows because I'm bad. I don't drive up there now. You know, the other thing, I don't know, and I don't know if you can tell me this, Herb, but there was an amazing old railroad trestle, but I'm thinking like 40 years ago, up when you went up, you kept going at Beneke Creek Road and finally got to, what's the mountain? Shoot, my brain hiccuped.
Nikolai?
Yeah. Is that
Yeah,
railroad
Nikolai
trestle still?
Mountain. I think so. No, they've deteriorated and rotted down. You can't even see them anymore.
Oh, okay.
They're gone.
And probably on private timberland anyway.
Well, that may be state, but where I'm thinking, but they're gone.
The other thing on trails is that state forestry has in Tillamook County developed lots of trails, but other than Northern Creek Horse Camp, I don't know that they've developed that much in Clatsop County, but I'm assuming they were planned to perhaps develop more trails, and I don't know if it can be notated under trails. But we're going to go to at Gull Lake recreational lands, but
under the Goal 5 resource inventory, should we include Red Bluff Park?
Think we got one?
I think so because it's old growth. I don't know if we have other old growth in the county.
Right, and it is highly visible to people driving from Portland to the coast. It's a really good example of it that with good accessibility and where people can see it.
Yeah, and you know, there's the Elsie Cemetery, which is all part of that piece. I looked on County Web Map, and it includes the Elsie Cemetery. The trouble is the turn into Elsie Cemetery is extremely dangerous, I think. How it is on the top of a blind curve on top of the hill and everything.
Okay, would that be a historic site?
The Elsie Cemetery, there are sections under cemeteries and all of this, but yes, I mean, Elsie Cemetery has the original settlers as well as Jewell Cemetery, I think.
Okay, so it might end up on two different inventories. This is Julia, and I just wanted to let you know, you can think about these other sites that you think should be included, and you can email them to Gail or to me, and we'll get them, onto the list for further discussion later. You don't have to come up with everything just this moment. So feel free to email us with other ideas for inclusion. I wanted to probably ask you to take a look here at appointing a liaison to the countywide CAC, and then wrapping up your discussion and taking any public input, because you are at noon right now.
Thank you.
Do we have public part of the meeting, or are we all members other than the Carol who hasn't spoken up?
It would appear that you are all members except for Carol Johansson. So do we want to have you select a liaison among you? Is there somebody who wants to take on this, or do you want to, nominate somebody or coerce somebody?
Well, I have been trying to attend the meetings, and I'm willing to volunteer.
For me, I'm not sure what my schedule is moving forward, and so I don't, I'm not, I'm not wanting to commit to that at this moment. I mean, if it needs to change down the road, then Yeah, I'm going to try to get to more of those meetings, but I just haven't been able to up to this point.
Susanna, I appreciate your willingness to volunteer, and I don't know if we need to make a motion. Julia, do we need to make a motion for this?
You can if you'd like. I don't know that it's necessary unless there's some sort of dissent. You can agree just by, you can just, you know, do a consensus type thing. I mean, is there anybody who would prefer to do it, or do you want to share the duties or anything like that?
Any thoughts, Herb?
No, that's fine. I don't have a lot of extra time myself, so I wouldn't be able to do it.
Okay, so it sounds
Okay.
like maybe by consensus, then Susanna will be your CAC liaison, if that is agreeable to everyone.
Absolutely.
Yeah, yes.
Okay.
Totally.
I do want to let you know that at your next public meeting, which will be, and I don't think I wrote it down, but it's going to be in January. I think the thing we were looking at is you need to look at when your next meeting is going to be. I think we waited until we had the new members here. So you have been meeting on, I think, the third, are we on, yeah, the third Thursday or the third Friday. I think most recently it's been the third Friday of the month at 10 a.m. has kind of been your schedule most recently. Is that going to continue to work for everyone?
That works for me.
Okay, Pam.
I know.
Yeah.
Herb, I think I heard said yes.
Yes, that works for me.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was so tired
I
after
prefer-
yesterday's meeting that it was a little intense because the countywide, is that third Thursday?
Yeah, third Thursday.
On the other hand, all these things are rattling around in my brain anyway, so I guess I'm doing okay today.
Okay, so the third Friday at 10 a.m.
Yeah.
Third Friday at 10 a.m. seems to be agreeable. So we'll go ahead and set up your next meeting for that date. And I don't have a January calendar in front of me, but we'll get that out to you. So the third Friday at 10 a.m. And Susanna, we will get you on the liaison list so that you'll get in notice of their next meeting as well. I mean, I think you're getting it anyway, but with the packet and everything. You
It'll
will
be
have
January 15th, Julia.
January 15th. January 15th, everyone. Thank
okay.
you.
So it's a
Thank
week
you, Gail.
before. Okay.
And then, so at that meeting, we will also have on your list or on your agenda, election of chair and vice chair. Okay?
Of our Elsie Jewell Maple Seaside group.
Yes, of this committee,
Okay.
correct.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you all. Well, thank you planning for your commitment to this process. I know everybody thanked you yesterday, but it's so much for you guys to take on.
Thank you to all of you as well, because you're really the heart of the effort. So we appreciate it.
you.
And we're so glad to have you and Herb join in the committee. We really are. So
Yes.
I think it's going to make for some very interesting discussions and viewpoints. So I'm looking forward to it.
All right.
And happy holidays to everybody.
Yes.
And thank you all for your support.
Merry
and your
Christmas.
patience.
See you next year, or talk to you next year.
Okay, it sounds to me like you're adjourning. So I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording.